Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really pushing the envelope, moving way beyond the usual Internet of Things stuff.
Yeah, we're talking about a future where biology and digital technology, they properly merge. It's this idea called the Internet of Bio-Nano Things, or IoBNT.
Right, IoBNT. And the sources we pulled together for this, well, they're pretty heavy, honestly. We've got telecom research papers mapping out 6G, even 7G wireless,
Dense stuff.
and also high-level geopolitical strategy documents talking about something called Biodigital Convergence.
So our mission, if you like, is to unpack all that, to really understand how the big players, research labs, governments, international bodies, how they're actually building and standardizing a network where, well, the human body itself becomes a key part of it, a node on the network.
It sounds like sci-fi, but the groundwork is being laid. And we should probably mention the key expert whose work really underpins a lot of this theoretical side.
You mean Professor Ian Akyildiz?
Exactly. I mean, the guy is a legend in telecoms, helped shape everything from 2G right up to these future 7G concepts.
And crucially, he spent, over 15 years researching these tiny nanoscale machines, and IoBNT specifically. His work is, it's pretty central to what we're digging into.
Okay, so let's start there. IoBNT. You said connecting biological cells and artificial nano devices to the internet. How does that even work technically inside the body?
Right. That's the fundamental challenge. You can't just shrink down Wi-Fi, regular radio waves. They don't really work at that nanoscale.
I'm not.
Well, two reasons mainly. They just don't scale down effectively. And perhaps more importantly, they struggle to get through body fluids properly. It's like trying to shout underwater.
Okay, so if radio waves are out, how does a nano device in your bloodstream send a signal out?
It mimics nature. That's the key. It uses something called molecular communication.
Molecular communication.
Yeah, think of it like your body's own messaging system. Hormones, proteins, those are natural information carriers, right?
Yeah.
So these systems use molecules as the data packets. Maybe releasing a specific molecule means one, and not releasing it means zero. Or different molecules for different signals. It's basically using biochemistry to send digital information.
Like a biological Morse code.
Kind of, yeah. It's really the only way that makes sense for networking tiny things deep inside a living, wet biological system.
And that directly connects to these future wireless plans you mentioned, 6G, 7G.
Absolutely. Akyildiz's research specifically talks about electromagnetic nanonetworks beyond 6G from wearable to intrabody. It's all building towards this idea of a health body area network, or BAN.
Body area network. So what does that enable practically?
Think real-time, continuous health monitoring, but way beyond your Fitbit. This is potentially monitoring stuff like heart conditions, glucose levels, maybe even early cancer markers, constantly. Yeah. And that data doesn't just sit there. It could be downloaded to your phone, sure, but more likely transmitted instantly to your doctor or an AI system for analysis. It changes diagnostics from periodic checkups to, continuous surveillance.
So how do you build the nodes for this network inside the body?
Researchers are using these bio-inspired ideas. They're creating essentially man-made biological nanomachines, sometimes genetically engineering bacteria or other cells to perform specific tasks.
Like what kind of tasks?
Well, the ambition is huge. Imagine engineered bacteria designed to actively fight something like Crohn's disease from the inside, or systems aimed at slowing aging, prolonging healthy life.
That's incredible. Are there actual examples, or is this still mostly theory?
Oh, there are projects underway. Look at DARPA's Panacea project.
DARPA, the U.S. Military Research Agency.
That's the one. Panacea is designed to use tiny sub-millimeter bio-nano devices, basically nanoparticles, to detect infection levels inside you. Detect them, and then transmit that data out to some external hub for remote monitoring. It's like an internal, always-on diagnostic check for infectious diseases.
Okay, so Panacea is about diagnostics,
Yeah.
Sending data out. But that raises a huge question, doesn't it? If these things are inside you and they're based on biology, can they be programmed or reprogrammed?
And that brings us to a really critical, maybe even startling claim from the source material. It connects this advanced theory directly to something very real world.
Go on.
Professor Akyildiz himself, speaking in 2023, stated very clearly that mRNAs, messenger RNAs, specifically mentioning the ones in the COVID vaccines,
Right.
he described them as nothing but small-scale, nanoscale machines, his words, which are programmed and injected. And he even added that this whole approach is going really well with these COVID vaccines.
Wait, hang on. He's saying the mRNA vaccine technology is an example of these programmed nanoscale machines. directly linking his theoretical work to that global biological intervention.
That's what the source states, he said. It's a pretty direct connection between this IoBNT concept and a technology deployed on a massive scale.
Okay, if that's the case, and if this molecular communication we talked about can be two-way, the security implications are just astronomical, aren't they? We're not talking about hacking your email. We're talking about hacking your actual biology.
Exactly. And this isn't just us speculating. The source material, Akyildiz's own discussions, explicitly raises this danger.
What does it say?
It talks about the risk of reprogramming these artificial cells or engineered bacteria. Remember, the goal is to program them for good, like fighting disease, using DNA manipulation.
Right.
But the flip side is the worry that someone, an adversary, could potentially come and then really reprogram you and kill you even. Those are the words used. It highlights this existential threat.
Reprogramming and kill you. That's stark. So if the risk is that high, are they talking about defenses? Is there like a biological firewall concept in these plans?
Yeah. They absolutely stress the need for scalable, secure solutions. They acknowledge the danger, the potential for, biological hacking. But figuring out how to secure these two-way biodigital systems, especially at scale, that's the massive challenge.
It sounds like a whole new field of cybersecurity is needed, like immune system integrated cybersecurity.
Pretty much. You're trying to secure communications happening at a molecular level inside a living organism. The complexity is immense.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit from the nano-level mechanics to the bigger picture, the geopolitics. This whole field is being called biodigital convergence, right?
Correct. It's defined as this fusion, this merging of life sciences with digital tech. So engineering, AI, data science, nanotech, all coming together with biology.
And this isn't just happening in labs anymore. It's becoming national strategy.
Definitely. We see clear national strategies emerging. The United States, for instance, is way out front in terms of just sheer funding volume.
How much are we talking?
Well, the data we looked at showed that since 2015, something like 3,500 companies in this space got funding, averaging around $65 million per company. Just a huge amount of capital flowing in.
Okay, so the U.S. leads in investment. Who else is making big strategic plays?
Israel is fascinating. They've explicitly made the bioconvergence revolution a national priority, a key economic growth engine.
How are they approaching it?
They're leveraging their strengths, particularly their highly digitized, centralized medical records and genetic databases. They essentially use the country as a massive real-world lab, like in their big collaboration with Pfizer.
Right, I remember that.
And that whole ecosystem is driving innovation there, things like bioprinted corneas, these advanced nanoghost drug delivery systems for cancer. They see it as a major economic and technological advantage.
And what about Canada? You mentioned standardization.
Yeah, Canada's playing a really crucial role on the international stage. They're actually leading the main international standardization group for this. It's through the IEC, the International Electrotechnical Commission. Their group, SEG-12, is focused specifically on biodigital convergence.
So they're trying to set the global rules of the road for this technology.
Essentially, yes. Their job is to figure out what standards are needed for this whole field as it emerges, trying to get some governance in place before it's everywhere, which is vital given the stakes.
Speaking of things moving fast,
Yeah.
there was that interesting note about the term warp speed. We all associate that with Operation Warp Speed in the U.S. in 2020.
Right, for vaccine development.
But apparently the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, used the phrase warp speed technology way back in November 2018.
Yeah, that's correct. He was talking about the need to harness the benefits of these rapidly accelerating technologies, including biotech and AI, while also managing the risks of misuse. So the concept, and even that specific term, was already circulating at the highest international levels well before 2020.
Interesting historical context. Okay, let's shift back to applications. You mentioned the Internet of Living Things, or IoLT, earlier. And this is where we get that, frankly, kind of bizarre example. Spinach sending emails. Tell me about that.
Right. It sounds completely wild, but it's a real project from MIT engineers. They basically hacked spinach plants.
Hacked spinach? How?
They embedded nanoparticles into the leaves that can detect certain chemicals in the groundwater, specifically nitroaromatics, which are often found in explosives.
Okay.
When the plant roots draw up water containing these chemicals, the nanoparticles in the leaves emit an infrared signal. A simple infrared camera can pick up that signal And then that camera triggers an alert.
Yeah.
In their experiment, it sent an email. So yeah, Spinach sending emails to warn about potential explosives nearby.
That's actually amazing. A biological sensor network using plants.
Exactly. And they also showed it could detect changes in water pressure in the roots, potentially predicting drought conditions. So turning living plants into environmental monitors.
Mind-boggling. Okay, what about more direct human healthcare applications?
Well, personalized medicine is a huge area. Take cancer treatment. The idea now is you can sequence the genes of a specific tumor,
Right.
use AI to analyze that unique genetic profile, and then design a personalized mRNA vaccine targeting that specific tumor.
Okay, that makes sense conceptually.
But here's the kicker: the manufacturing. They're developing systems where this custom vaccine can be robotically manufactured in something like 48 hours.
48 hours. From tumor sequence to personalized vaccine.
That's the goal they're working towards. It completely changes the speed and precision of cancer therapy.
And beyond vaccines.
Regenerative medicine is another massive frontier. Researchers are studying the signaling pathways in animals like salamanders that allow them to regrow lost limbs.
Trying to apply that to humans.
That's the long-term hope. To figure out how to trigger similar regenerative processes in humans to perhaps one day regrow limbs or repair severely damaged organs like hearts or spinal cords, it involves deep manipulation of our own cellular processes.
Which leads us inevitably to the really big ethical questions around human editing. CRISPR gene editing technology, for instance.
Exactly. CRISPR has opened up possibilities that were unthinkable just a decade or two ago. It's being explored not just for treating existing genetic diseases, but for preventing diseases before they start.
Like turning off a gene that predisposes someone to Alzheimer's.
Precisely. Or potentially even, and this is where it gets really controversial, enhancing traits, boosting intelligence, increasing disease resistance beyond the norm.
But is that actually being pursued? I thought editing the human germline, making changes that would be passed down to future generations, was largely banned.
Germline editing is currently banned for reproductive purposes in most countries, yes.
Yeah.
There's a broad international consensus against it for now due to the profound ethical implications and safety concerns. But research is happening. Scientists are studying how germline editing could potentially be used safely in the future, framed as a way to safely eliminate or improve resilience to disease for generations to come. The ethical debate is intense, but the research hasn't stopped.
So all this convergence, the IoBNT, the personalized medicine, the potential editing, it's driving what people are calling the bioeconomy.
Absolutely. You're already seeing the early stages. Think about all the biometric data collected by your smartwatch, your phone, fitness trackers. That data is increasingly valuable, and it's being collected outside traditional hospitals or clinics.
Your body data as a commodity.
Essentially, yes. And the next step, which is being actively discussed, is the idea of DNA data marketplaces.
Marketplaces for my genetic code.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Using technologies like blockchain for security and transparency, individuals might be able to choose to share their anonymized or identifiable genomic data with pharmaceutical companies, researchers, maybe even governments.
In exchange for what?
Payments, perhaps? Or access to certain services, personalized health insights, who knows? The point is, your genomic data itself becomes an incredibly valuable resource.
A strategic asset.
Exactly. It's the raw material for developing new drugs, understanding population health, maybe even for national security purposes. It fundamentally shifts the value proposition of your personal biological information.
Okay, let's try and pull this all together then. It's been a lot. We've gone from tiny molecules communicating inside the body as the basis for IoBNT and future 6G, 7G networks.
The molecular communication piece.
To this really striking claim from a leading expert describing globally used biological interventions like mRNA vaccines as being examples of programmed injected nanomachines.
A direct link made in the source material.
We've seen how this is being standardized internationally, led by countries like Canada, and backed by huge investment in national strategies in places like the US and Israel.
Yeah, the global framework is definitely being built.
And the applications range from Spinach sending emails to ultra-personalized, rapidly produced cancer vaccines, and the potential, however ethically fraught, to edit our own genetic code.
The scope is just immense. The core tension seems crystal clear, doesn't it?
Which is?
On one hand, you have the promise of medical breakthroughs we could only dream of before curing chronic diseases, maybe even defeating aging. Personalized therapies delivered almost instantly, incredible potential benefits.
But on the other hand?
On the other hand, you have these unprecedented risks, security threats that target our very biology, deep ethical questions about bodily autonomy, control over our own genetic information, and, what it even means to be human when we can be fundamentally reprogrammed.
So for you listening, the takeaway isn't just that your phone might get faster with 6G or 7G. It's much deeper.
It's about this fundamental integration that's being planned. Your own biology, the internal workings of your body becoming part of the digital infrastructure. You potentially become a node.
A programmable data-generating node.
Right. Which leads to, I think, the final really provocative thought to leave you with.
Okay.
If we can engineer Spinach to detect bombs and send emails, and if the human body, with all its intricate biological data, is really set to become this central, incredibly valuable part of the global network, how do we, as a society, draw the lines? How do we make sure that the immense value generated from our collective biology actually benefits individuals and doesn't just become this massive source of power and control for, big corporations and government?
Who owns your biological data and who gets to program the network running inside you?
Exactly. That's probably the defining question for the next decade, isn't it?